Let's talk about color grading and how some small adjustments to your renders can really improve the quality of your work. If you've spent a ton of time working on this beautiful environment, this beautiful scene, or this beautiful prop that you've put so much effort and love into, you want to make sure that you don't phone it in at the very end when you deal with the renders and the post-process and the presentation of your asset. In order to get the most out of it, let's take a look at post-process inside of Photoshop, color adjustments, color grading, vignettes, noise, and some additional information that should help take your renders from this to this. All right, let's see what we can do. When we started out working on the oil rig, we had some ideas in mind of the general composition, the placement of the scene, but we didn't do a lot for color grading, lighting, and understanding what the final product was going to look like yet. So just grabbing even this very first render helped us start to figure things out, like the focal length of our camera, trying different distances, different positions, and general composition for what this might look like. As we started color grading it a bit inside of Photoshop, we can see that adding some warmer tones, some more yellows and oranges into the scene really starts to make it feel more alive, like it's warmer and it's out in the sun. This is based on a California oil rig, and so you're going to have more of that warmth to it. Where in some environments, like in this sci-fi dystopian future, we've done another effect on it, which adds a bit more blues, a bit more haziness, and gives it more of that sci-fi feel, because cooler tones mixed with oranges and yellows tend to bring out that sci-fi effect that you see a lot in movies and other renders online. Now I'm showing you some before and afters, as well as a few ways that the post-process affects your renders, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we can go from what you're seeing to the final product. Just turning off some of the layers here and turning on some of the layers, you can see where it started and where it got to. Now, understanding the look that you're going for is fairly important before you get started, but you are able to kind of make some adjustments as you're working on it too. So since we're long past this one now, it's not as relevant anymore. I can close out this image, and you got to see basically the blockout version, some understanding of our composition, and how the scene comes together in the end. This is the final render that we released our pack with, and this is what it looks like when I turn off any of the post-process or color grading features for it. I'm also going to disable the logo and just the branding on the picture. So one of the most important things when you're color grading, if we come back to this image here, you can start to see it's not quite getting that haziness that you'd expect from an ocean environment. There's definitely some fog in the background, and it helps to provide a little bit of that to the image, but we're losing it a lot in the foreground, and you don't feel the evaporation and precipitation of these like humidus, is that a word? Humidus clouds in the sky here, knowing that the environment's going to be very moist and contain quite a bit of water even in the air. One of the best tools I find to play around a bit with the color grading and the post-process in the scene, if we come up to filter and go down to camera raw filter. This is probably what I use the most when I'm trying things out, playing with different color grades, and working on the post-process for my renders. If you select this presets option over here on the right side, there may be something similar if you're using a free program like Photopea or something else online. Camera raw filter has been fairly common being implemented even to those free features lately. So if there's not some available presets, you might be able to find people recommending options or downloads for presets for that too. So once we select our presets, you'll see there's quite a bit of options here. Depending on the type of scene we're going for, like I said, you may choose something that's based on seasons, which tends to prefer autumn being like browns and oranges, summer giving like the reds and the hotter feels, spring, you can see where this is going, so I'll leave it there. When I'm working, I generally have a few different kind of go-tos that I like to start from and see if it works for the image. You see I put a star next to CN12 under cinematic because this is one I use quite often. I just like the way that it balances out some of the colors, adds a little bit of contrast into parts of the image, and adds a bit of a vignette around the edges too. Futuristic sometimes can provide some really cool options too, but it tends to create a lot more contrast and, as I mentioned before, lean towards more of those blue and green tones and the cooler colors that give it that sci-fi look almost that you'd go for. In this case, let's move on from CN12 and adjust our picture from there. So at the top is the amount of preset overlay that you're going to blend between the original image and the preset that you've just applied. So when I come all the way down to 0, it's pretty much the original image, and then all the way back up to 100 is the full CN12 effect. And you can amplify that even further and go up to 200%. 200%.
I'm giving her all she's got, Captain. If I push it any harder, the whole thing will blow.
In this case, we're going to drop it down just to about 80% or so to start bringing in some of those values that we get out of it. But we're going to make some manual adjustments to it as well. Under the edit option here at the top right, now we can start to manually adjust things like the exposure, highlights, shadows, temperature controls, and even come and look at some of the settings that were changed from that preset. So these color grading options were applied after I selected the CN12 variation. It changes things both in your color mixture, color grading, and your curve. So this is a great way to be able to study what some of these presets are doing to create the effects that you see as well. If there's ones that you really tend to enjoy and use a lot also, you can check out the color grading and color mixer settings that are applied, and then be able to tweak it yourself eventually. But I find that starting from those presets gives you a great foundation, and it's a great way to learn how to use these color mixing and color grading features as you move forward. In some cases, you might find, like in this preset here, it tends to make your greens a bit darker, as well as desaturating your greens. And that's part of what gives this CN12 the effect that we're seeing here. You can also play with those values after they're applied and take a look and see exactly what it's changing in your image. This looks to mostly affect the clouds and isn't doing as much to the rest of the scene, so it's perfectly fine to leave the settings the way they are now. I'm more so going to come up to my shadows and highlights in this case. It's darkening the right side of my buoy quite a bit here, and we're getting a fair amount of contrast in these shadowy areas on the underside of the oil rig. So I just want to boost my shadows a bit more. It starts to reduce the vignette on the sides there, and even increases that kind of hazy, foggy feel that we're seeing. If you want to toggle between what the original photo looked like and what your preset looked like, right here you can just click this button on your camera raw settings to toggle between the original and where we are right now. So let's keep playing with these settings a bit until we get something that feels like what we're looking for. I'm gonna increase the temperature slightly just to make the scene a little bit warmer, give it that California feel, as I mentioned, that I was looking for. And there's another cool feature here, dehaze. This does exactly what it says. If I increase that, it reduces the fogginess in the scene. And if I slide that to the left, it almost makes the fogginess feel slightly stronger and adds a little bit of haze to your scene. We can balance that out both with the clarity and the texture, which you can see what those are adjusting and how it's affecting the image as I slide this up and down here. I'm not going to touch those ones here, but maybe just add a little bit of clarity and reduce the dehaze, so I'm hazing it basically. We'll add some of the vignette back to this and increase some of our whites here a bit, as well as check out those highlights, see if we can get the sun to feel accurate there. And now let's toggle back and forth between the original and where we are now. If you want to play with very specific parts of your image, you can also select this masking section here on the right and paint very specific areas of your image specifically to change specific
Again, I dare you. I double dare you, mother. Say
specific
one more goddamn time.
So you can see it's creating a red glow around the area that I'm painting. After I've selected what I'd like to change, then you can adjust in just that specific area of your image. Decrease the exposure of it, increase the exposure of it, add, remove highlights. You can basically do everything that you can normally, but it's only affecting just this one part. But I think we're getting a pretty nice effect with what we have right here. Let's go ahead and click OK. And this is the current result that we have. I'm going to go ahead and just create some black bars again on the top and bottom of my image. So just standard marquee select here. And this is just a personal preference. I like to add these black bars. It makes you feel like a filmmaker. Another kind of nice feature, which is not a feature at all, it's really just the brush. I like to sometimes add some personal glow and haze into the scene. So by selecting the brush tool and creating a new layer, I'm going to hold Alt and just select what appears to be the brightest part of my scene. And that's because I'm trying to get the color of those bright highlighted areas to create a sort of overlay where the direction of the light is coming from. So of course all the light is coming from the left side here. We can see all the shadows and just make that determination pretty quickly. Now after I've made my new layer, I'm going to make sure to put it underneath those new black bars that I have here. I'll just press Ctrl E and put them into one layer by merging them down. Now if I take my brush, reduce the hardness of it so it's a very soft brush. I've already Alt selected the brightest part of the image, and now I'm going to zoom out and just place this brush as one single click really large in the top left hand side of my screen, kind of as if this is like sun rays or God rays coming into the image. And now you can see it already starts to add that haziness and that fogginess back into the scene, as if I'm having that atmosphere right there in the foreground. After you place it, just Control T, and you can even scale it up and down to see if you want to make adjustments to the size of it and the placement of it on top of your image there. But it's already creating some pretty interesting overlays here. If it's feeling as though the haziness is a bit too strong in the foreground, you can just add a mask and paint out areas that shouldn't have quite as much fog and quite as much haze in them. If it affects the background too much, you can see right here like I'm kind of missing parts of the clouds. Just press X to switch between your black and white layer of your mask, and you can paint back in or back out any of those details as you need to and kind of find the balance that you're going for. Everyone's going to have their own personal tastes and personal choices as to what the final image should look like for them. In this case, it could be too overexposed for some people, but those are all settings that you can determine while you're playing with those camera raw filter settings. That's the bulk of the idea of color grading and post-process. Of course, the longer you do it, the more you're going to find your own style, your own techniques and tips and tricks that help you to really push the boundaries with the quality of your renders. In case you're interested, I go over just one more image example of that sci-fi scene to show another variation of like the cooler tones and a bit more of like the bloom and highlights around where lights can go in the scene too. So feel free to stick around for that one, but this one's just going to be like simple, no more memes.
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
That's done. And just raw learning content for those of you that are interested. So enjoy. As one more example, I do want to quickly run through this sci-fi scene as well to kind of show what helps to achieve the look that we have here. If we do again the camera raw filter, let's run through the same sort of workflow coming into the presets, trying out the classics, and in this case I don't really like the way it looks as much. Let's look at some of those futuristic options, and you can see some really cool variations for how it's making the image look. I'm starting to dig actually again FT08 here. This one's kind of cool too, the FT11. You can see that really makes my glows pop quite a bit there, but ultimately let's go with FT04, and I'll make a few changes from there to kind of see what we can get from it. You can see in this preset it actually changed the vibrancy of the image as well as the whites in this case to get the look that they were going for. I'm just going to start by increasing the exposure of the scene a bit and reducing the texture and clarity settings. I think it makes things look a bit too sharp and a bit too noisy in this case. Again, I'm going to increase some of those shadows. We can see how that's affecting the scene here. And play with the temperature a bit. Make it a bit warmer in this case. I think that feels pretty nice. And if I reduce those highlights just a bit, I actually get a really nice effect where we can see the sky quite a lot better in the background there. So let's go with that. And then let's try hazing up the dehaze again. By doing that, I'm instantly bringing in a lot more of that fog. So some of those other settings I just changed, I might come back through and readjust them to kind of compensate for what's happened after I added back in that dehaze setting there. I know it's fairly common for people to want to just show off every part of your scene, every asset, make everything bright, make everything clear and crisp, and you've worked so hard to make this beautiful by creating all these textures, all these props, all these elements in your scene, but when you do that, it doesn't present it as it should be. Oftentimes adding that atmosphere back and having some shadows and playing with just the contrast of the general scene to be able to bring the focal points and the highlights to the areas that you want is going to present everything in your environment in a much better light, pun intended. You can always do breakdowns later where you take your props individually, show off wireframes and show off the modular kits that you've created. So there's plenty of opportunities to still let people see all the work you've put into this while presenting your environment in a really nice direction. I think I want to bring some more of those yellows and oranges back. So I'm coming down into the color mixer and increasing the saturation just a bit on some of those yellows. And the oranges to make those pop a bit more, and then also the luminance of them. This is how you can get some of that really nice glow on just very specific areas if you're seeing, if that feels interesting for you. The more you dive into these settings, you can really see how powerful they can be for making the look of your image exactly how you want it. All right, I think I'm pretty happy with that actually. So now we can see again just one more look, toggling back and forth between the original and how some of these color grading and post-process features affected it. Let me click OK to accept that. I'm going to put those black bars back at the top and bottom, and I'm not being super accurate or specific in this case, just for the purposes of this tutorial. If you want, you can always again do that same sort of glow effect. If you're feeling like you don't quite have enough atmosphere yet, we can just select the bright part of the sky here, create a new layer, and then just find the general area that the light is coming from. Have your soft brush selected and then we'll add that right there on top of the image. You can see the glow effect that that adds, and again, it instantly just increases the atmosphere that you have throughout your entire scene by putting a tiny little bit of glow right at the top there. That feels pretty cool. You can do the same thing even just for these smaller lights if you want. So again, just using your brush, selecting that with the eyedropper, and then just adjusting the scale so it's around the general size of the light. I'll just click on the scene there, and if it's not quite big enough, we can make it slightly larger. That adds some interesting glow, but maybe it's a bit too strong. I'll reduce the opacity again, add a little bit of glow like that, a little bit of glow like that. Kind of as much glow or as little glow as you want in the scene, even around some of the lights here in the foreground. And if it starts to get too much, you can always turn on and off the atmosphere that you're adding in just to see how much it's affecting the scene. I think this one's pretty nice, but as we start to add some of these other ones, maybe it becomes a bit too bloomy and a bit too much glow just everywhere. If we want to keep some of it, we can always just reduce the opacity of that layer. And I think that looks pretty good. So you can just see some of the different versions I have because this is a smart object. I've got my filters on here. You can see the first iteration and the second iteration, and then the ultimate image here that we got from some of those post-process settings. And just exactly how powerful it is and completely changing the look of your image. From the start to finish, it's an entirely different feel and emotion that it evokes from the colors and the space, and the full effect is obvious as you can check it out here with me. So give that a try. Find some of these similar settings in the free online versions of Photoshop and Photopea and some of these other options. I believe GIMP is another one if you want to check it out. And share your results. Feel free to tag us on X or Instagram or Blue Sky at Sierra Division. And we'd love to take a look at some of your work and see what you're doing with these color grading and post-process effects. Thank you very much, and see you next time.